Hello, and welcome to this Cresfest world. That great funky playing is from the Haas Sisters of the USA, international guests at Cresfest in 2023. My name is Neil Adam, and somehow I got mixed up in the gang that was setting up Cresfest, a music festival which takes place every year in April in Creswick, a small Victorian town 15 minutes from Ballarat, maybe 90 minutes out of Melbourne. Organising a music festival in a small country town puts you in touch with all kinds of interesting people. Some are local, some not. Some are musicians, some are not. Some of the chat is about music, and guess what? Some is not. Welcome to episode 23. Yep, 23, that means there's another 22 that you can go back and listen to. This week I spoke to Mickey and Michelle, a fantastic and talented duo making a name for themselves at music festivals all over Australia. Their music inhabits that intriguing world between classical music, jazz and traditional folk music, and their musical life is made up of an amazing mixture of duo work, arranging for small orchestras, and long-distance hiking. Yes, you heard it right, hiking. Stay tuned.
I guess I grew up playing classical and Celtic music. Doing classical piano mostly, but I guess playing kind of more Celtic harp, as that's the sort of harp that I had, was a lever harp.
How old were you when you started gigging, Michelle?
I think 11 was my first wedding that I played at, and I've been playing the harp for about 2 years. I was young. I started piano at 3. I come from a musical family, so it's just kind of what you do. Yes, it does mean that I've never had to do any of that retail jobs or any of those random things that Mickey's done.
Yeah, she's never done labour like us.
I've never had to do that.
That's
I just
sad.
like the harp around.
You've missed out on a lot of...
Yeah, I know. Look, there's still time.
That's true.
There's still time. Uni was interesting because that was the first time that I did classical harp. I bought a pedal harp and went and did, full sort of classical sort of delve into that, which was really great. It got me some really good technique, but it was sort of good with bad, and then I ended up actually with a lot of performance anxiety, I would say, from it. And sort of in recovering from that, I came back to the Celtic harp, and that really helped, actually. So after a little while, I sort of had this great technique from all that training on the classical, but then I also got back sort of, my performing mojo eventually. And I found that, I feel like lots of people have these kind of stories. It's sort of like, this was really good, but that wasn't so good. But I think I've taken from it some good things.
I think everybody has those stories, but I think mostly people of my generation didn't used to talk about them. True.
How did that go?
Well, not very usefully, to be quite honest.
Oh, bugger.
I must say that I'm someone who suffered from performance anxiety quite a lot, and haven't always found it easy to manage.
You wouldn't know it watching you perform.
No, and that's often the case.
Yeah.
Well, I think we learn how to mask it, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't think that's, in my own experience, I don't think that's really very helpful. But then I guess you do have to tell yourself, I'm either going to have to stop this completely, which at various stages in my playing life I have done, or you have to mask it or just get on with it somehow. Don't hold myself up as any great model of that, I can tell you. But anyway, What about your own journey with anxiety and obviously coming out the other side of it? Michelle, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it really helped for me because sort of my big issue was memory. So I felt like I couldn't remember things, having done some really challenging classical music, sort of thing. I found that really challenging. I just felt like I just couldn't, I used to be able to play, an hour or so of stuff from memory, and then I felt like for some reason that was gone, and I would have memory blanks and that kind of thing. And what really helped was actually being asked to play with Fiona Ross. And she's a Scots singer, and it was just going back to something very, very simple, I suppose, in that I would just have a lead sheet, so chords and stuff, and I would put them on the ground kind of thing. So it's like a safety net, I guess. But also then it's not written music that I have to play in a certain way. It was like knowing the chords and knowing the structure of the piece, and I can improvise on it. And just sort of going right back to sort of those sorts of bases, and that, has slowly built up my confidence until you can take those sheets away or in that kind of stuff and then build it all up again. That was, very much what helped me. And then also, like, it was nice at that point, she had a band, so there's quite a few of us. So, there's sort of the ability to hide a little bit. Not everything is on you. And then I worked up to being able to play in a duo again, which is obviously a bit more exposed, and also playing solo again as well.
When I was a young girl, I used to seek pleasure. When I was a young girl, I used to drink ale, and straight from the alehouse and into the jailhouse. Straight from the jailhouse to my die.
So the duo thing is a very special thing to observe. I've watched the two of you many times, and with great joy and delight.
Yeah, I came to Violin Land a little bit via the back door. Like, I started playing jazz fiddle in a group in my 20s, and then I met Michelle and moved down to Victoria, and then we realised we needed to start playing together. And so coming to, duo playing, like I was coming from a band playing jazz to a duo playing like some sort of mix of jazz, classical and folk music. We butted heads a lot at the beginning because I was writing tunes like I was still in a jazz band. And then being like, why can't you play this? So it took a long time at first to figure out how to work together. But once we got over that initial hump, things have been a lot better, smoother, like more, I don't know, musically satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
We had a challenge at first to overcome, I suppose. Like I was saying, he comes from Jazzland. He loves, he's had a guitarist and they can play all of the chords. And my harp that I play, the lever harp, it doesn't have all of the notes. And it doesn't have them all very accessible, the ones that it does have. And so, I had to sort of really try and, can't work in the same way as a guitarist. But there's other things that I can do.
Yeah, exactly. And like, one of my earlier tricks was like, if I think this piece needs a bit more excitement or something, it would be to put in some sort of crunchy jazz chord. And then Michelle would be like, I literally don't have that note as an option. And it would be like, well, there goes my one trick, And then like looking back on it, it's like, I was trying to get Michelle to play like a guitarist instead of the absolute weapon of an instrument that the harp is.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's so many great things it can do. Like, why not write for its strengths rather than its weaknesses?
Yeah. I think
it's definitely a learning curve for both.
I completely understand that. So that Judy and I played as a duo for years and years, and it's definitely true that when you're performing or making music with your partner, you can devise ways of writing, in my case, songs and instrumental music that bear that person's potential part in mind before you even start. So
Exactly.
It's like bespoke writing for certain, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. With that one person in mind and their strengths and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Lovely. So what would, if people haven't seen Mickey and Michelle, what kind of thing should they expect?
Ooh, lots of notes.
I think this probably sounds, I don't know, this might sound cliche, but I guess hopefully we take them on a journey. We like to sort of talk, we do lots of hiking and we like nature a lot. I mean, lots of people do, but we like to really talk about it and write about it and try and take people to places that we've been with our music, with lots of notes and sometimes not so many notes. I guess
a good place to start is everything is original that we play.
Yeah.
So all of the pieces and songs are written by us. Mostly about our experiences, either out in the sort of remote parts of Australia or New Zealand, because we do a lot of long distance hiking, or on the other side, probably like celebrating our place in the music industry, in the music family that we feel so warmly accepted into.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're gonna you're going to hear, we try to strive for 50% songs and 50% instrumentals within our set. So you're going to have songs and instrumentals, harp, violin, or fiddle, I should say, and vocals as well.
And I suppose, like more if like no one likes to put what genre they fall into, but like loosely we are in the folk genre. I mean, this podcast is for Cresfest Folk Festival, but whereas say like a traditional folk band might have like 3 traditional tunes stuck together as their song, their performance piece. Yeah, what we might like to do is to write one tune and sort of with a more classical or jazz lens, like pick little parts of them and develop them into new sections. And yeah, we're not afraid of a 6 to 9 minute song. So like we really get into developing our tunes so it starts with like a very small idea and becomes this big sprawling thing at the end.
What anybody would like to try and understand is how a harp and hiking go together, apart from the fact that they both begin with H. They don't naturally appear in the same sentence often, I wouldn't have thought.
I'd say that they don't go together well, essentially, although it is lovely playing, wooden instruments out in nature. But that's about it. No, so it's more just that they're my 2 loves, harps and hiking. So I just try and put them together, whether or not they should be or not. But yeah, so the band essentially formed because we wanted to do this hike in New Zealand called the Tail Road Trail, which is a 3,000 kilometre hike. And we're sort of trying to figure out a way of making it. It takes about 6 months and trying to make it kind of more feasible, both sort of financially and probably mentally as well, taking that much time away from music. So had this, I guess, rather wild idea of doing a walking tour, which, walking with a harp is not ideal, and it's not actually what we did because it's not the harp, although I have quite a lightweight one, it's sort of about 8.5 kilos, probably 10 kilos in its soft case. Within this hike, you need to do 9-day stretches, which means that your pack is about 20 kilos without the harp and also just the shape of it and size of it. So we devised a way in order to be able to do this walking tour, which was essentially to ask our lovely audiences whether or not they were travelling, 100 kilometres down the road within the next week or so.
To where our next gig would be.
Yeah, to where our next gig would be. And there was always someone, and we would palm our instruments off with them, and so our instruments would beat us to our gig, and we would then spend a week or so walking and catching up to them. And just made our way down New Zealand like that, which, sounds... Well, it worked. Might sound a bit extreme for some people.
We didn't have any issue. Like, so many people would ask us, like, are you okay sending your instruments with these strangers? And it was, I guess, more or less yes. Like, it worked every time.
Yeah, they're not complete randoms in that they've come to your gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've come along for the journey at that point, and then we didn't ask them straight away. We'd usually wait until intermission or something.
Generally sort of suss out if the person was a musician or not, so they would know not to leave it outside or in the sun or something. But yeah, it always worked, and it was a really nice way to bond with people.
Yeah, people like helping out if you ask. I mean, that's what we found out. Yeah.
So the North Island of New Zealand is quite a populous... is more populous than the South Island.
Yeah, it doesn't have as many wilderness zones.
You walk through a lot of... there are, like, some astonishing places, like, for example, Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Tongariro Crossing.
But that's a lot more of, like, hiking through... farmland, sort of bush tracks, whereas the South Island is so much more remote and rugged.
It's much more connected up, essentially. You can walk down the Southern Alps.
And very pointy.
The whole way. And very pointy.
Like 3 weeks into the South Island, there's a place called the Waiu Pass, which is just like ridiculous mountain ranges.
Yeah.
Like snow-capped everything.
Pristine lakes and rivers, essentially. It has blue water.
Blue Lake?
Blue Lake,
It's just
sorry.
Blue Lake? Yeah. Which is like the clearest natural lake in the world. And it's 80 meters deep, but you can see to the bottom, which is like unfathomable for Australia. Like we're used to the tannins in the water where you can't see 30 centimeters down.
Yeah, we have lots of brown and
But
coloured rivers.
it was so amazing. It looked like you could just reach in and touch the bottom, but
Yeah, well, you're not meant to. So we don't.
but it was 80 meters deep. Like it was so hard
pristine.
to believe that it was that deep. But
Absolutely.
yeah, that was just like a really special time of like really like challenging hikes, but then rewarding views. We had particularly good weather.
Yeah, we're lucky.
And yeah, it felt good to like really stretch our muscles.
Yeah, and the way passes passes are always amazing because you climb very, very high, and then you finally get to the top, and you're extremely exhausted and sweaty, but quite euphoric as well. And you can just see both. You can see both where you've come from right down to that valley, and you can see the valley that you're about to go down into. So it's just this amazing looking back and looking forward kind of moment.
Oh, if only life could be like that.
Can
it?
you just got to get dirty and go hiking.
We just have to dismantle capitalism.
Start now.
Oh, yeah, well, I just love the idea that you could be climbing up a pass of life, and there would be the whole of the future clearly laid out in front of you, and there behind you.
Only when you reach the top, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's only when you get to the top, because you're just slogging it for maybe even 3 hours going up. Essentially, it's so much physical work, but it's such a great payoff. That's the fun thing.
I love those kind of comparisons between sort of physical things that can happen in your life and philosophical, sort of metaphorical aspects to them. I've done a lot of stone wall building, and I had in mind,
cool.
I had it in mind that I would write a book about the things I've learned from building stone walls, which are mostly not to do with stone walls, but you're faced with a lot of pieces of stone, none of which have been designed by God to make a stone wall, and it is your task to make a stone wall. And no matter how improbable the pile of stones beside you looks, you can always make a stone wall out of them.
Cool.
There's some sort of, there's some metaphorical thing about life in that, and I love the idea. I love the idea of, climbing up and sweating hard and coming to the pass in life and being able to look back and forward. It's gorgeous.
But we choose it. 15 million moths, they can't be wrong. There's this music.
I remember you telling me not so long ago that you've got a plan for some more hiking experiences.
Yes, there's pretty much always a plan. This is something we've learnt to do so that you don't end up with something that's called trail blues, which is a bit of it's quite a thing, especially when you start doing through hikes, which just means like long distance hiking, essentially.
Yeah, but the trail blues is when you finish a really long adventurous hike and then you go straight back to work and then you feel sad.
I mean, this can be for any adventure, right? Like it's just, when you're like, So what we found is that if we just have the next one planned, or we're planning it while we're hiking the current one, that really helps to sort of, to see the next adventure on the horizon, essentially. Our second overseas hike, long distance hike, we're going to do the Pyrenees, or the high route of the Pyrenees, going coast to coast.
Between France and Spain.
Yeah,
between
lovely.
France and Spain. You're kind of on the border, essentially. And it's one that's been on the list for ages. And that's going to happen this August. And we're quite excited about it.
I'll bet you are. And how long will that take you?
6 weeks, if we push it, which we are hoping to do.
Yeah. It's about 800 Ks.
It goes up to 3,000 meters high, which is exciting. Like there's going to be some snowy parts that we'll need.
Yeah, there's a couple of passes.
We'll need crampons on our feet, which are the ice picky shoes.
Oh, wow.
I know, this feels really fun. So about 6 weeks, we'd say, barring any injuries.
Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed.
Sometimes you need to, spend you might need 5 days or something in a town to let something kind of heal. Or there's various things that happen along the way. It never goes to plan.
I started arranging in 2011 for biggish ensembles, and I used to do this gig in Sydney once a year where I'd pick one of my favourite bands or singer-songwriters and just arrange some of their songs for like strings and woodwinds and brass or whatever. And I really had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, some of it sounded nice and I learned stuff along the way. But yeah, that was a lot of work. It was like sort of 6 to 8 months of work for one gig that, no one got, well, the singer would get paid for, I wouldn't. And then, it really, and that was before I knew anything about folk music. I never went to festivals. And then, coming to the festival land, it made a lot more sense. And so, Michelle and I sort of put together this rearranging package called Restrung, and Dorigo was the first one to take us up on it, and then the National Folk, and then the River Folk, and now Cresfest. So it's starting to gain a little bit of an audience in the Australian scene. And so what we do is we choose some of the artists who are already performing at the festival, and we arranged one of their songs for it could be up to anything, but we did it at the National Folk with a 40-piece string orchestra. And so we arranged, like luscious orchestral parts for those songs. And so the video that you're talking about is Scott Cook, the Canadian singer, playing at the National Folk Festival. And that was a particularly nice one.
And I still love my country. Sometimes it's hard to recognize it, but I count myself lucky to have been born inside it. And I'm grateful for the rights others struggled hard to win. You can be sure I'm gonna fight when they try and take them back again. Oh, and everywhere are teachers, though some fell along the way. The words they said still reach us, just like you're teaching me here today. And it might not be out loud, but it's clear in what you do. And I hope to make you proud, 'cause I borrowed it from you.
And so in the Restrung concert, it's kind of a bit like a variety concert in that we'll arrange about 6 artists' pieces, and then they'll play back to back. So you'll have one, and the string orchestra stays on stage, and then the artists come on and introduce themselves, and we play their piece with them, and then they go off and the next one comes on. So it's a really lovely show for the audience to kind of see, maybe these artists that they've seen throughout the weekend, and now they get to see one of their pieces with the string orchestra and how that changes it.
Yeah, and the ethos is kind of the artist benefits in that they get to have, their work arranged for like massive instrumental section, but also the orchestra is made up of both professional string players and amateur community members. So the idea is that you could be on stage with that artist that you love, on the main stage at the festival, playing like really high quality music for a one-off performance. So it's supposed to be special for everyone.
It's such a beautiful thing to observe. Like from a musician's point of view, I don't know anybody who wouldn't love to have their songs arranged for a luscious string section, and mostly it's sort of inconceivably difficult. I have to organize or to even imagine how you could find someone who would be prepared to do the arranging, and then how on earth would you lay your hands on a lot of musicians who'd be able to play what had been arranged for them, and how would you get them all in the same place? Like if you were trying to record an album on that basis, I haven't got the foggiest idea how you'd even start to try and do it.
That is where you need one Michelle Doyle, because she's a logistics diabolical queen.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is a bit of a logistical nightmare, to be perfectly honest. But it's that thing too where the feels are good enough, or that that it kind of you get back the energy that you put into it.
There's so much talent in the Australian folk scene among, like, obviously everyone, but the string players that we know are so up for it. So many people have some ridiculous classical history where they can sight read Bach at 300 BPM, and then have come to folk for probably that reason. So there is a really wide community that we lean on to make it happen.
Yeah.
And then, Michelle's ability to corral people is really, really special. So it is very, very hard, but there's a vast talent pool to draw from.
There's so many people who help out. essentially. You know, like we've hopefully, like, we have a bit of a community who, it's like these things gain legs, you know what I mean? Like once people sort of get it and then they enjoy being involved with it, and then, it sort of snowballs like that.
So, like, for example, Cresfest is, at the time of recording, like 5 weeks away-ish, and the majority of the arrangements are done. Some of them are going to need a little bit of a cleanup, but we'll post them out to... we'll post them online soon, or make the link available or whatever to people who want to be involved so they could start practicing. So this is the ideal situation where people who are interested could actually be practicing, you know, a month out. It's really good. But then so we have 2 rehearsals booked for Cresfest, one on the Saturday morning and one on the Sunday morning. And we'll just go through our tunes.
That's where everything has to pull together magically in those 2 workshops. What usually happens is that the first one is just like, let's just kind of read through these pieces and sort of see kind of what's hard or what's okay, or all that kind of stuff. And then the second one is, let's bring the artists in, ideally for 15 minutes or something, 20 minutes, where they just run it through with us, and we make sure that they're still singing it in the same way that they were on the recording, in case there's some bars missing.
Not uncommon for them to say, I don't really do verse 2 anymore. Like, excuse me?
Now you do.
You have to.
So it is really 2 worlds colliding, and it's classical and folk, essentially, kind of thing. But that's kind of the fun, I think, and that's also the beauty of it too. Because, I know this has happened too. We've had some artists who, they don't read music. And like, that's okay. That's not your job to read music.
Yep.
It's us, that's our job to try and make this work and pull this together. But we just need them to ideally do it as the recording is that they gave to us for the arrangement. And the thing too is that we've had things happen on stage where it doesn't go to plan. Maybe they dropped a bar, various things like that.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say that Scott Cook video you were talking about, I can't remember what he did, but he did something where he spoke to the audience or something and like added a few bars because he was saying something. Yeah. And like, if that was a classical orchestra, there's your performance over. Like, but everyone just sort of knew, like we had 40 people on stage and I just sort of like held up a hand being like, don't play anything, and then when he came back in, we all just nailed it. It was so beautiful. And that's like, again, the strength of like people who can read sheet music and play to a high degree, but also understand this sort of,
more band kind of improv type thing that you need to do when you're performing.
Until your deadline never seems so far away. On and on until your bedtime and rising with the day.
We move at a glacial pace.
Yeah, some people are like, oh, when's your next album coming out? I'm like, whoa, 5 years from now? Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully the effort shines through.
Yeah, hopefully it's in there.
And this one is mostly inspired by the New Zealand hike.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We don't really do love songs, which I feel like is almost a rarity in the folk world. But most of I guess our love songs are for mountains. Musically, we really try to push our arrangements. We've got this one tune on there called Playing Truant, which is sort of inspired by Michelle being I guess listeners can't see this, but Michelle has long, elegant red hair, and she's a tall, elvish creature. And then she plays a romantic instrument like the harp. So
stereotypical.
People often expect, pretty...
harp music.
Pretty twinkling, and then...
Which I do.
Which we do. But then we also really try and push it with, like, pretty advanced polyrhythms.
Yeah.
Like aggressive strumming styles on the harp.
Yeah, it's always when people come up to me afterwards and say, I haven't seen a harp played like that before. I always feel like that's a compliment. I'm always trying to, show people that there's quite a different side to the harp. It does pretty and elegant, it does it really well, and we definitely lean into that, but it has another whole side.
I've seen Mickey and Michelle doing their restrung concerts at various festivals, and it's really a great thing to see. I recommend you get yourself into the rooms where it's happening at Cresfest in a few weeks. As always, it was just lovely talking to them in a conversation that ranged from how to manage performance anxiety to climbing large mountains, from working as a duo to arranging for orchestras. Just brilliant people. This podcast and the Cresfest Festival take place on the traditional lands of the Jara people who have made music and told stories on this land for many thousands of years, and we're very proud to follow in their footsteps. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow us and rate us and tell all your friends. We've got more than 2,000 listeners now, and it's growing with every episode. This has been episode 23 of this Cresfest World podcast. Go back and listen to the other 22. There's a lot of great conversations in there. We're going to leave you with one of the fully orchestrated tracks from the new Mickey and Michelle album. It's not available yet, but here's a track called Welcome to the Club. In the words of the old BBC presenter of my youth, John Ebden, if you have been, thanks for listening. I'm Neil Adam. See you next time.